Recorded Books and RB Digital present Bloodsworth by Tim Junkin, narrated by Jack Garrett. Preface. 1865 was a momentous year. The American Civil War was drawing to a close with the surrender of General Robert E. Lee and the assassination of Abraham Lincoln in Ford's Theater. Slavery in the United States was about to be abolished. And far away, in the beautiful Abbey of St. Thomas, in the small provincial city of Brno in the Austro-Hungarian Empire, a short, bespectacled abbot with a love of botany was putting the finishing touches to his studies on pea breeding. Unwittingly, the abbot was about to unleash a chain of events that would lead directly to the remarkable story of anguish and courage that you are about to read. The abbot was Gregor Mendel, and his work on pea hybrids revealed for the first time the fundamental laws of inheritance that applied just as well to you and me as to his pea plants. Mendel had discovered genes, the particles of inheritance. It took another 88 years for scientists to work out exactly what these particles look like, the DNA double helix, thanks to James Watson and Francis Crick. My own involvement came, as happens in science, entirely by accident. I had joined the Department of Genetics at the University of Leicester in the English Midlands as a rookie lecturer in 1977. My fascination was with exploring inherited variation directly in human DNA. By total chance, we stumbled onto bits of DNA that varied hugely between people, allowing us for the first time to identify individuals by their DNA. Thus was DNA fingerprinting born. By a strange twist of fate, in the very year of the first DNA fingerprint, a young girl was raped and murdered, and a man was convicted of this terrible crime and sentenced to death. That man was Kirk Bloodsworth. Everyone now knows that DNA can be used in criminal investigations. With high-profile court cases and popular TV series like CSI, it would be hard not to know of the power of DNA to identify the guilty. But what of the innocent? In fact, the first time we used DNA in a criminal investigation, way back in 1985, it led to a prime suspect in a similar case of rape and murder being shown to be innocent of the crime. Without our DNA evidence, and given his false confession, I have no doubt that he would have been convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Here was DNA as a two-edged sword, clearing the innocent as well as identifying the guilty. The current impact of DNA on police work is huge. The numbers speak for themselves. In the United Kingdom, our National Criminal DNA Database now carries some 3 million DNA profiles and has already proved crucial in over 500,000 investigations. But these bald numbers hide countless personal stories, some squalid, some touching, some tragic, but none, I think, as extraordinary and inspiring as that of Kirk and his quest to escape death row. My wife Sue and I had the great privilege of meeting Kirk and his wife Brenda last year at an award ceremony in London. This was emotional stuff. Here was a gentle giant of a man who has turned a personal tragedy into a force for great good. Kirk is DNA's champion, tirelessly campaigning for testing of DNA evidence of convicted people, with over 150 individuals who served long sentences or faced state execution, now freed from U.S. jails. We need a Kirk in Britain, too. I am delighted to see Kirk's story published. This is an extraordinary tale of terrible injustice, of anguish and frustration, of courage and fortitude. It's a tale of a truly good and inspirational man, and of the true power of DNA. Sir Alec Jeffreys, Leicester, June 6, 2005. Part 1. A Stain Lifted. George Bernard Shaw wrote, "And so to the end of history, murder shall breed murder, always in the name of right and honor and peace, until the gods are tired of blood and create a race that can understand." Chapter 1. In the late afternoon of April 27, 1993, Bob Moran sat in his law office, located near the city courthouse in Washington, D.C., and stared out his window at the new Olson's bookstore across the street. There were books in there he'd wanted to read for years, but couldn't find the spare hours. Moran had been up most of the night, assisting lawyers in Austin on an emergency petition for a stay of execution on behalf of a Texas inmate scheduled to die by lethal injection. For weeks, he'd been immersed in preparing to defend a man at trial facing a possible death sentence in Maryland. He'd also been assisting lawyers in Georgia and South Carolina on numerous post-conviction strategies in capital cases in those states. And he'd been preparing pleadings opposing the federal government's first attempt to apply a new death penalty law in a military tribunal. That April afternoon, Moran had just returned from a meeting with the federal prosecutors at the Department of Justice. His khaki suit was creased, his tie undone. He wanted to change into the blue jeans, pullover shirt, and sandals that he usually wore in the office, and that lay in a heap on the floor. But he felt too tired to move. Moran looked over a desk piled high with files. His gaze stopped on the dream catcher tacked to his office door. It was an authentic Navajo relic, presented to him by a grateful client. Raised a Boston Catholic, he preferred the simple Native American spirituality to any institutional religion. He studied the dream catcher on his door and made a wish for the one client whose image he couldn't shake, the one client who was haunting his thoughts. He took a deep breath, looked up a number on his Rolodex, picked up the phone, and dialed long distance. At 40 years old, Bob Moran had devoted most of his legal career to assisting people facing the death penalty. By age 30, he had walked away from both a lucrative position in private practice and a promising academic career at Georgetown University to join the Southern Center for Human Rights in Atlanta in an effort to fight the swelling tide of death sentences being imposed and carried out in 9 southern states. From there, he'd gone on to become a public defender in Maryland, specializing in death penalty cases. And then in the nation's capital, he formed a small law firm dedicated to helping death row inmates. Moran had long believed that the way the death penalty was being imposed in the United States was unjust. Now, having spent years battling executions in state after state, he'd become certain of something else: that there were inmates facing execution or serving life terms in prison who were innocent. One such person, in whose innocence Moran had come to believe strongly, was Kirk Bloodsworth. Kirk Noble Bloodsworth had been sentenced to die in Maryland's gas chamber for the 1984 rape and murder of a 9-year-old girl. After being granted a new trial by a Maryland appellate court, Bloodsworth had been convicted a second time. His appeals to the higher courts in Maryland had all been exhausted. In February 1989, Moran had received a call from Gary Christopher in the State Public Defender's Office, asking him to meet with Bloodsworth. Every lawyer who's touched this case believes the kid is innocent.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.